Denmark declared Greenland a nuclear-free zone. That was the official position. No nuclear weapons. No nuclear deployment. No permanent atomic infrastructure. Greenland was part of the Danish kingdom. And Denmark did not want nuclear escalation on its territory. But under the ice, something else was happening. In 1959, during the height of the Cold War, the United States began constructing a remote base in northwest Greenland. Officially, it was called Camp Century. Publicly, it was described as a scientific research facility. A symbol of cooperation. A peaceful Arctic experiment. That was the cover. Beneath the snow and ice, engineers were testing something far larger. A concept known as Project Iceworm. The plan was simple in theory and terrifying in scale. Build a network of tunnels under Greenland's ice sheet. Install hundreds of mobile nuclear missile launch sites. Hide them beneath the Arctic surface where Soviet surveillance could not easily detect them. The ice itself would become camouflage. If completed, the system would have stretched for thousands of miles. Hundreds of launch points. Constantly moving missiles beneath frozen ground. A nuclear spiderweb under the Arctic. This was not rumor. It was not speculation. It was documented. To power Camp Century, the U.S. Army installed a portable nuclear reactor, PM-2A. A functioning nuclear power plant operating beneath the Greenland ice sheet. This alone created tension. Denmark's official policy was nuclear-free territory. Yet a reactor was installed. Operational. Active. The Danish government was informed about Camp Century as a research base. But the full scale of Project Iceworm, the missile network plan, was not publicly acknowledged at the time. The Arctic became a chessboard. The Cold War logic was brutal and direct. The Soviet Union had intercontinental missiles. The United States needed survivable launch platforms. Greenland's ice sheet provided insulation, secrecy, and distance. From Greenland, missiles could reach deep into Soviet territory. But the ice had its own agenda. Engineers underestimated something critical: the ice was not stable. Greenland's ice sheet is not solid rock. It moves. It shifts. It compresses. It fractures. Slowly, but relentlessly. The tunnels carved under Camp Century began to deform. Walls buckled. Ceilings cracked. Structural supports twisted. What was meant to be a permanent nuclear network began to collapse under natural pressure. Project Iceworm never reached full deployment. The missile grid was never completed. The dream of a hidden Arctic launch system died quietly. Camp Century itself was abandoned in 1967. The reactor was removed. But not everything left. Waste remained. Fuel residue. Contaminated materials. Buried infrastructure. All left under the assumption that the ice would remain frozen forever. Decades passed. The Cold War thawed. Documents were declassified. Project Iceworm became public knowledge in the 1990s. Not conspiracy theory. Not leaked rumor. Official documentation. Engineering diagrams. Strategic memos. Military planning records. The United States had indeed planned to build a nuclear missile network under Greenland. And Denmark? Denmark learned the full scope years later. This is where the tension sharpens. Denmark had declared Greenland nuclear-free. Yet nuclear infrastructure existed. And long-range nuclear missile planning had occurred beneath its territory. Was it technically legal under NATO defense agreements? Possibly. Was it politically transparent? No. This wasn't unique to Greenland. The Cold War was filled with secret basing agreements, quiet deployments, and classified arrangements. But Greenland stands out for one reason: the ice. Because the story didn't end in 1967. Climate change is accelerating. Greenland's ice sheet is melting at increasing rates. Scientists have warned that remnants of Camp Century, including waste materials, could re-emerge as the ice recedes. What was buried as Cold War secrecy could resurface as environmental consequence. In 2016, studies raised concerns that melting ice might expose radioactive and chemical waste left behind. The base was never fully dismantled. It was entombed. For decades, that seemed safe. Now it looks temporary. History doesn't disappear. It freezes. And sometimes it thaws. Project Iceworm represents something larger than a failed missile plan. It represents the logic of the era. Fear drove engineering. Engineering outran politics. Secrecy outran transparency. Governments acted first. Explained later. Greenland was remote. Strategic. Sparse in population. A perfect Cold War laboratory. But the local Inuit population was not part of the strategic equation. Military decisions were made thousands of miles away. The Arctic was treated as empty space. Yet it was not empty. This is the deeper layer of the story. Project Iceworm wasn't just about missiles. It was about assumptions. Assumptions that geography could be weaponized. That ice could be engineered. That secrecy could outlast time. The United States ultimately abandoned the project because the environment proved stronger than military ambition. The ice moved. The tunnels failed. Nature rejected the design. But the documentation remains. The plans were real. The reactor was real. The base was real. The intention was real. And that matters. Because it reframes how we think about Cold War history. We often imagine visible moments: Berlin Wall, Cuban Missile Crisis, nuclear tests. But much of the Cold War unfolded invisibly. Under oceans. Under mountains. Under ice. Camp Century was part of that hidden architecture. A world beneath the world. And Greenland was not the only example. Throughout the Arctic, military installations expanded quietly. Radar networks. Airfields. Submarine routes. The polar region became a silent front line. Today, geopolitical tension is returning to the Arctic. Russia is rebuilding Arctic bases. The United States is increasing polar presence. China calls itself a near-Arctic state. Greenland is once again strategic. History does not repeat exactly. But it echoes. Project Iceworm failed technically. But strategically, it revealed something enduring. Superpowers will attempt the impossible if the perceived threat is large enough. Even if it means carving nuclear tunnels under moving ice. Denmark's nuclear-free policy was not erased. It was complicated. Political language often lags behind military planning. And small nations sometimes discover the full picture years after decisions are made. None of this requires exaggeration. The facts are enough. Camp Century existed. A nuclear reactor operated under Greenland. A missile network was planned. Declassified archives confirm it. What remains unresolved is not whether it happened. It did. What remains unresolved is the larger question. How many Cold War projects remain buried, physically or politically, waiting for time, climate, or transparency to expose them? Greenland's ice once hid ambition. Now it hides consequences. And the world is warming. History didn't rewrite this story. It archived it. Under ice. Until someone looked. And now you have.